Hey guys, today I wanted to do a video on data and information overload, just basically how much access we all have in the world. If you can make sure you just like and subscribe down at the bottom, leave any comments, questions that you have, future video suggestions. So when it comes to data overload, what I mean by this, and if you're a part of the groups or anything, Nick talks a lot about this, but essentially Instagram, Facebook, all these news articles, all the information to books, doctors, studies about sleep, diets, health, ice baths, I mean, just exercise, all this stuff, right? And it's kind of an information overload. If you looked back at like the 1920s, for example, during that time, people had no idea really about, like, for example, sleep apnea, okay? Or problems with sleep. Like now, and people back then, I mean, they're living to be 90 years old, 95. You know, they didn't have access to information about all these different vitamins and what they did, and all these different types of exercise, and different foods that you should eat, different allergies, things that everyone's allergic to, all this stuff, right? Well, nowadays, you know, you read a study nowadays and they're like, oh, if you don't get at least 6 hours of sleep, you have a 20% more likely chance to get cancer, right? If you eat these kind of foods, they cause inflammation and can cause anxiety and problems. And if you don't take all of these vitamins can cause this, and this, right? Well, what happens is people live in fear of, you know, obviously dying, like mortality is a real thing. And there's this thing where everyone wants to live this healthy lifestyle to really live as long as possible. And the reality of it is universal deservingness. You can't really control life. Like, I don't care how many times you do an ice bath. Like, if you're gonna get cancer, you're gonna get cancer, right? Like, none of that is going to change. But there's so much data out about every single subject that you can imagine that's causing people to have very restricted lives. Wake up at this time, do this, take these vitamins, eat this. And people have all these systematic ways to create all this longevity. Well, you end up having this really restrictive life that's all about trying to live rather than actually living it, right? People back then, without access to the information, what they do? They worked, they slept, they ate what they wanted, they exercised, they did a good job, they spent time with their families, they tried to educate themselves, but there's not this massive mortality rate that existed, or all of this informational data that caused all these disruptions. Well, nowadays we have access to all these things, and there's so many emotional disturbances based on all of these things, right? Especially if you're someone with health OCD, right? So for me, you know, I had health OCD. I read about autoimmune diseases. I read a vitamin Bible. I read a book on how to, all the foods that would be the healthiest to avoid you getting cancer, reduction in anxiety. I read a book on essential oils, all this crap, right? And the worst time in my life where I was, well, one of the worst, when I was so chronically stuck and anxious, I was taking 15 supplements a day. Now I take couple things. I take a vitamin thing my doctor tells me to take, and my life is a lot more happy. Like, before, I had a very restricted diet. I ate chicken or beef, grass-fed only, avocados, beets, sweet potatoes. That was my whole diet for like 4 or 5 months, okay? I was absolutely miserable. I love things that are sweet. You know what I did? I decided to drink nothing but coffee without sweetener for years. Because I was like, oh, this isn't healthy. So I acquired a taste for black coffee. Well, now I kind of like coffee black sometimes, but shit, I like throwing some sugar in there. You know what I'm saying, right? Like, oatmeal raisin cookies are amazing. You can eat them. They're not going to destroy your life, right? And there's all these studies and all this data that creates these rigid black and white beliefs. And like I said, you guys, if you want to live and you want to be happy, you can't live life that way. One of the best things I can tell you is if you never took advice from anything on social media again, you'll probably live a happier life. You can scroll if you want, but all these people, these one percenters on there are giving all this advice to 99% of the other people in the world, and it doesn't apply. It's not something that is applicable, and it's not something that's going to be healthy, and it's going to cause long-term anxiety and suffering. So in closing, guys, live life in a balanced way, and you don't have to be rigid about everything. The reality of it is, if you're going to have something truly bad health-wise or life-wise, it's probably mostly going to be out of your control. So anyways, well, that's all I got for you guys today for OCD and anxiety recovery.